Do your hair, Connor. God damn it.
I am. Same. I'm doing it.
All right. Well, Connor finishes primping himself over there. Welcome to the MMA Vivisection. I am your host, Zane Simon. This is my co-host, Connor Rebush, who's he's got to tie his hair up. I mean, you know, I've got a hair clip here. Should I put a hair clip in and just like,
Sorry, I just realized how silly it looked when it was like floofing around the sides. See, I have this whole fantasy about having like long hair, but my hair is still very broad, more than it is long, and it's also growing out from the haircut you have, so it's in a horrible stage of transition that I just don't care enough to cut it.
So you might, no matter how far you grow it, you might just end up with like a white fro. Like,
well, it used to be like that. Now it's straight and wavy now, but it's very like wiry too, so it doesn't like lay flat on my head like a normal person's hair should.
So you need to get yourself some frizzies. You got frizzies? Like that's the way to go. You get some frizzies, and then
that would require doing something to my hair besides putting a hair tie in it.
Okay, well, sooner or later you'll have that glorious, like, you know, speed metal guitarist hair. And
yeah, that'd be amazing. I would love that.
You can, like, comb it over your face while you do videos and like break down fights.
I want to do all of our breakdown videos with me doing like the rolling headbang where I'm just twirling my hair the whole time.
That's right.
Like I'm on a Marth, just doing it nonstop.
That's right. That's what we're headed for. So, just you know, if you're wondering about the future of the Vivisection, there's your glimpse into it.
Yeah. # career goals. I want to have the death roll headbang.
All right, so we got UFC 198 in front of us, and it is frankly a absolutely fantastic card, even without Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall, which I was looking forward to that fight. I mean,
yeah, it wasn't going to be like an uplifting experience, but it was definitely interesting. It was a fascinating matchup to see where Anderson was, and if like it was the Anderson Silva who was no longer the man he used to be versus the next Anderson Silva who failed to live up to expectations. It was an interesting matchup.
Yeah, versus the guy who was never going to be the man that Anderson Silva was going to be. Like
there have been a lot of next Anderson Silvas. Wasn't Felipe Nover one of them as well?
Yeah, Felipe Nover. And yeah, I mean, it's just it's not happening. Like it's not. You're not going to be Anderson Silva. Nobody has been Anderson Silva. That doesn't really. That tends not to be how great fighters work. It's like people keep talking about the next Mike Tyson, and it will never happen.
Well, like Anthony Pettis was kind of an Anderson Silva type, and didn't work out so great for him.
No. So even without Anderson Silva, this is still an amazingly fun, stacked card, top to bottom. Yes. No bad fights. Should be really awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we're just going to jump right into what is, for me, one of the harder fights on this card to pick. Not the hardest, but one of the more difficult. Renato Moicano versus Zubara Tukhugov.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not an easy one to pick. I think Moicano looked pretty damn good in his UFC debut. Who did he fight again?
He fought. God damn it.
I'm bringing it up. He fought Tom Nianamaki, who, in fairness, his UFC career did not pan out anything like it was expected to, but still, Carnero just tore through him. Like, he didn't have a single issue in that entire fight. I'm struggling to recall a notable, because I just watched it the other day, and I'm struggling to recall a notable incident of him actually even getting hit. He didn't get taken down. He worked him on the ground. You know, and then we've got Tukhugov, who is like a crazy explosive counterpuncher. The thing is the thing that makes this fight difficult to pick is I think it could end up being a really slow fight.
Yeah.
Because both of these guys like to let their opponents lead. And Carnero, he throws a lot more willingly when the opponent leads. He has the hair trigger counterpunching style and punch kick combinations and all that. And Tukhugov is a little more choosy with what he approaches, and sometimes he'll do a lot more backing off and resetting to try to get the ideal opportunity to attack. Although when he does get that opportunity, he will certainly swarm you with volume, but it's more in bursts. And I actually think that because when you have two counter fighters fight each other, a lot of time it's a staring contest. A lot of times that's what happens. I think it's going to be Carnero who's more willing to lead than Tukhugov.
Yeah.
And I think that will actually play to Tukhugov's favor. I think it'll be like, like the first round of Trinaldo versus Ross Pearson. Trinaldo didn't fight as aggressively as he had in the past because he wanted to make Pearson come forward. And he didn't win a lot of the first rounds. But it still compelled Pearson to come forward eventually. Like, Pearson got frustrated hanging back. I think that even if they spend the first round here staring at each other and Carnero throws more volume and takes it, ultimately Tukhugov will get to have what he wants, which is Carnero coming forward and opening himself up. So I think Tukhugov takes it. It's a really close fight, though, and Carnero throws enough, and he has the ground game advantage, too, though
Tukhugov's
wrestling has been really solid.
I got to say, I'm picking Moicano. And the biggest question for me here is Moicano's time off, which I think isn't going to hurt him as much as it might some people, because going into his UFC debut, the book on him was, this is a guy who's always in the gym, who's always training, who's always ready to fight, which is why he was able to do so well on a short notice call up. And that to me seems like the kind of fighter who, when he's injured and coming back from a long layoff, is going to be ready, is not going to be rusty.
Sure.
But I think the big thing that swings it for me in Moicano's favor is, even when Tukhugov is getting the fight he wants, he rarely just dominates that fight, unless it's like Ernest Chavez, who is just not athletically anywhere nearly on par with Tukhugov and is going to get knocked out in the first round. Tukhugov seems to be much more the kind of fighter who, like, he has to either really hurt you with something, with one of his big single strikes, or it's just going to be this kind of funky, simmering, never quite pull the trigger fight where he might land a few big shots here and there, but his offense is never going, like, that Philip Nova fight was a split decision. That was a much closer fight than it seemed like, even with Tukhugov being way faster and more powerful. And
I thought it was a toss-up fight. I mean, Nogueira was not. I mean, in fairness, Nogueira has looked really good since his return to the UFC. But
it felt like watching it, Nova was legitimately constantly worried about Tukhugov's power and speed, and Tukhugov could never make himself press that advantage functionally.
I doubt that Moicano will have the same kind of fear. Like, he seems like a pretty bold fighter.
He seems like a pretty bold fighter, and I think he can functionally lead enough, perhaps just with his kicking game, to make it so that he's not necessarily easily countered while still winning rounds, because Tukhugov is not pulling the trigger often enough. And I also just have this feeling too that while he may not be able to get, Moicano's wrestling game is not elite, and while he may not be able to get Tukhugov down, he might be able to just kind of like scramble, get him out, get to his back, and force some disadvantageous grappling for Tukhugov, some scrambles that he can kind of functionally win and score points in. I don't feel Tukhugov's mindset kind of skill combo. Like, it's kind of like if you took a lot of the striking acumen away from Rashid Magomedov, and then you would have, this really low output counter striker who
it's like the same with he's like Filipe Pajic, who fought at the Croatia card, who was like, I like Jose Aldo, and it's like, not everyone can do what Jose Aldo does.
Yes.
And Tukhugov is the same thing. He's like Pajic, but like much more athletic. He's very fast and powerful. But you got me worried about my pick, but I'll stick with it.
So I'm picking Moicano there. The layoff worries me. It's a really close fight, though, and I could easily see it being a very slow-paced, even just like where you're deciding rounds on these thin margins of big single strikes landed.
Yeah.
Odds on this fight.
It could be one of those Condit Lawler fights where like Tukugov lands 5 punches around, but they're really good, and Carnero lands a ton of little slapping low kicks and stuff. I think either way, it's going to be a very difficult fight to see who is really better.
It is. I definitely feel like over the long term, I have more hopes for Moicano really gelling and turning his style into an elite fighter's style than I do for Tukugov. But it's a tough fight to call. The odds on it are reasonably close. Tukugov is a favorite, minus 147 up to minus 200. Renato Moicano plus 160 down to plus 125. So it's just it's an absurdly close fight to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, unless you feel like you really have a line on it, I don't think I would put a bet on that fight. It's just 200.
No. That takes us to the second Fight Pass fight: Sergio Moraes versus Luan Chagas, and I feel a lot more confident about this fight.
Yeah. Although you have been known, Zane, to have unwarranted faith in Sergio Moraes.
Well, I mean, unwarranted in that he lost a fight in the UFC to Cesar Ferreira, but he's never lost since.
He also lost to Mikhail Labu, if we're being honest.
He did, but
he looked pretty awful in that fight.
He did. I know. The thing with this fight, and unlike the Labu fight, because Labu, I did have at least some sense in that fight to know that Labu is a very good defensive grappler and a very willing to striker to just stand on the outside and play like a point striking game, which brings out the worst in Sergio Moraes.
Yeah.
Luan Chagas is not that guy.
No.
Chagas is one of those fighters he's kind of like the I don't know, even somewhat less common combination of being a good kicker and then a good top grappler. Like, that's his combo. Usually it's guys who are like really good kickers and then good off their back. And Chagas is more of the like, I'll kick really hard, and then I need to hit big takedowns and have top control.
It has worked. We got Aljamain Sterling. We got Luke Rockhold.
Yeah, it has worked. Chagas is very, like, I could see with the right camp and the right amount of time, him being a good fighter down the road. He's very young. He's tough. He's aggressive. But even though he's undefeated, or he's on a long win streak, I don't even actually remember if he's undefeated, but even though he's on a long win streak and finished a lot of people, his game really tends to depend on him getting people down and outworking them on the ground. And if he's in a brawl, if he's on the feet, he tends to get into a wild brawl where he gets hit a lot and hard. Things just make me feel like he's just going to rush in on Sergio Moraes and try to take him down. And if he doesn't, and it's just this weird points range game, Moraes is known for being stupid tough to the point that he was able to knock out Omari Akhmadov. Like, he's just able to ride out the fight, and eventually he can land enough and do enough to find a way to win. And I got to pick Moraes here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can hear me coming through your mic for some reason. Do you mind?
I'll mute while you talk. Yeah.
Okay, cool. With Moraes, his game is kind of awkward. It's one of those. I feel this way about a lot of Brazilian fighters. Their games are kind of weirdly cobbled together. It's like, okay, you've got spinning kicks, overhand rights. Not great wrestling, but it's okay. And then the ground game and all this. But the thing is with Chagas is that he is just not a defensively savvy fighter. He's not good in the pocket. He's not defending himself when he throws his hands. He tends to overcome that by being really aggressive. And he does end up in punching range a lot. That's the thing, is he charges forward and ends up in this range that doesn't suit him. And he's comfortable there because even though his record is solid, it's against a bunch of like equally or similarly experienced guys, young guys, prospects, people who aren't used to being recklessly swarmed like that. And if anything, Sergio Moraes' problem on the feet has been overconfidence, not underconfidence. He's not easily cowed or backed down. He will look for those openings, and he is the better wrestler, I think. And he has to be better on the ground. It would be a massive shock to see Chagas submit him. It'd be even shocking to see Chagas really compete with him that actively on the ground. And so it's like Chagas is probably going to hit Moraes some early. He's probably going to come after him, but he just doesn't have a sustainable style for this matchup against a much more experienced. Now, granted, actually, Chagas has more fights than Moraes. Moraes has been doing this for a long time. He's fought a higher level of opposition. And despite having this weird, janky style, he has actually done pretty damn well for himself in the UFC. So I like Sergio Moraes. I think he'll likely submit Chagas at some point.
Yeah, it does seem very likely. The odds on this, Moraes is the favorite, minus 400 up to minus 500. Chagas is the underdog, plus 389 down to plus 300, and I have no qualms about that, really.
Feels a little wide to me just because it's Sergio Moraes we're talking about here. But it's, it's
a style matchup made really well for him.
Yeah, there's no reason Chagas shouldn't be a heavy underdog.
Yeah. That brings us to the Fight Pass main prelim, Antônio Rogério Nogueira versus Patrick Cummins.
This is a weird fight. It's a very weird fight. It's light heavyweight, so that makes sense. Patrick Cummins has been pretty good since getting trounced by Daniel Cormier, unsurprisingly, in his UFC debut. He's got a pretty functional game. It's very old school. He puts on a good amount of pressure. He boxes fairly well. And he's got a really nice explosive takedown, which he will either pursue and switch to single legs and trips and things like that, or his best game is to use the reactive takedown when an opponent comes after him. I don't really see Nogueira giving him a ton of reactive takedowns because Nogueira, Lil Nog, has always been the better of the Nogueira brothers as far as his boxing. I think he won the Pan Am Games or something like that. As a boxer, he got a gold medal or something like that. He's been pretty solid, awkward kind of southpaw style. Unlike a lot of southpaws, he uses his jab a lot, so he keeps this really steady distance between himself and his opponent. And it's not like he hasn't frozen wrestlers in the past. If Cummins is anything like Rashad Evans, then he could get stuck on the outside just letting Nogueira take him apart. And I know Nogueira intends to do that, or at least I assume, because he said in that recent interview that he thinks boxing is the key to beat Cummins. Cummins isn't a terrible striker, but he really thrives on having that boxing integrated with his wrestling attack. He can't really survive on boxing alone, or he ends up like he did in the OSP fight or in the Cormier fight. So the thing is like, how can I possibly count on Antonio Nogueira here? Like the last time he fought, I think I picked against him literally just because he had so many injuries. Like he's fighting Shogun, who there's no reason to think either man will win, but Shogun's been fighting regularly. He seems to be at least fighting at a steady clip. And meanwhile, Nog has fought 4 times in the past 5 years. I looked back. I was trying to get a feel for him. Like, well, what was the recent fight? Oh, Tito Ortiz fight. He looked good in that. That was in 2011. It's been so long ago since the last time that he looked actually dominant in a fight. So I'm going to pick Cummins just based on youth, really, more than anything, because I don't think it's impossible that Lil Nog comes in here and picks him apart and makes him feel uncomfortable at range. But I have to imagine Cummins will be stronger and faster and a little fresher, and he will be able to get Nogueira down and beat him up a little bit from the top.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Cummins is that, unfortunately, because he's at light heavyweight, he only can seem to get fights where he's either fighting a borderline top 15 light heavyweight who is just clinging to relevance, or a top 5 guy who's just going to demolish him.
Yes.
And the big trouble for him when he fights elite guys is that the fact that he's not a really very good top control wrestler at all tends to punish him, because he'll get guys down with huge takedowns like he did with OSP, and then they'll get up, and it's just like, well, how many times can I hit these huge takedowns that I'm not scoring anything off of, and have you stand back up and then punch me a bunch more? I don't think he's going to have that problem with Little Nog, even if Little Nog doesn't give him a lot of reactive takedowns. I think that, if he hits one, a la the Kyle Kingsbury fight, or just
the Cavalcante fight.
The Cavalcante fight, he can just ride Nogueira for the rest of the round and beat him up, because Nogueira does not have that explosive ability to jump back up to his feet. I don't expect him to. He may have had it at one point in his career, but I think there's just, Cummins is an elite athlete. He is a very good power wrestler,
Shogun managed to control Little Nog pretty well from top position in the second round of their rematch.
Yeah, and the thing with that Shogun fight too, Little Nog hurt Shogun badly enough to win that fight in the middle of it. Like, he drilled him and dropped him and had him hurt. I don't even remember if he dropped him or not, but he had
first round he had him on really wobbly legs,
and he could not put together the strikes or pull the trigger enough to put away a thoroughly shot Shogun who is ready to be put away by most hard strikes these days. And without that ability, like, Cummins, he's gotten KO'd and he's lost, but it's not like he's not tough. No. It's usually just like he's really defensively porous. So at some point, his toughness erodes because he's getting clipped 15 times over and over again. I just don't see Little Nog having the ability to take advantage of that while also not getting totally physically overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So this should be a good showcase for Cummins that will then get him a fight with, like, Alexander Gustafsson or something. Where just get
that will then skyrocket him. You know what they should do, since they have two prospect-ish fighters to work with, is if Cummins and Corey Anderson both win, match them together.
Yeah, that would be.
Neither of them has to fight a top 5 light heavyweight yet.
That would be a great fight between two guys who have similar problems in that neither of them are
in that they're light heavyweights.
Knockout threats, but they're very good controlling rising fighters.
I thought you were saying they have similar problems in that they both fight in the light heavyweight division.
there's that. That light heavyweight, like, I advocate it for fighters. Like, go there. You can be like a top 10 fighter in that division with almost no work. Like, Ilir Latifi and Nikita Krylov are borderline top 10 light heavyweights right now.
Yeah, how solid has Tom Lawler looked since coming to light heavyweight?
Yeah, like, it's a great division to get you, a ranking and maybe even good position on cards, stuff like that, to get your name out there. But if you actually then need to climb up that division to the top 5, it's just like this impenetrable wall. Yeah,
it's a place for veterans to go to, like, realize their potential that they couldn't have against the smaller, more athletic middleweights, or heavyweights who
couldn't take the monstrous punches of other heavyweights. Yeah. On that note, Cummins is the favorite, minus 225 up to minus 280. Little Nog, the underdog, plus 221 down to plus 180. And I see why it's as close as that, because Cummins, he has these problems. Like, he is really just a takedown artist and a powerful athlete. And that these days has become even less and less functional in MMA. Fight opponents have figured out more and more ways to defend against somebody they know is just trying to take them down, especially if the person can't do a lot of damage once they have taken them down. But I just don't see Nogueira winning this.
I will say this. When Little Nog comes into a matchup and he knows he's going to have to stop takedowns, he is good at it.
Shogun, but he's almost 40.
That's the thing. But Shogun surprised him with that single leg in the second round. And when Shogun kept going for the takedown in the third round, once Little Nog knew it was an option, he didn't get another one. So I will say this could be the Rashad Evans fight, except that Yeah, it could be though. That's the thing.
I know
that was a horrible fight. But Nogueira got exactly what he wanted, and it's not like Cummins is like a much better striker than Rashad Evans.
He's a much worse striker than Rashad Evans.
Well,
in fact. Defensively, he is like
yes. Okay, yeah. He's less mobile, less light on his feet.
Yeah, I don't even know that he's less light on his feet, but he comes in like so stock straight up, winging these big power hooks.
So I'm just saying, like, to me, like, minus 280 for Cummins does actually feel pretty odd, because even though he is a decrepit old man at this point, Lil Nog has a kind of game that has frustrated fighters like Cummins in the past.
It's true, and he's only 4 years older than Cummins. I mean,
yeah, Cummins isn't a spring chicken. He's what, 33?
He's 35.
Yeah, I just called him a prospect-ish type fighter before. I think I gotta really lean on that ish.
His career started in earnest in 2012, so he's been doing this for a very short amount of time. So he's relative in MMA. His body's still kind of fresh, but I don't know. It's a weird fight. I think it's safe to pick Cummins, but you may be right on the there is that Little Nog Rashad fight does paint a severe shadow of doubt. The only reason I have less doubt in it is that Cummins has never really seemed to get backed way off of his game. He tends to just get hurt a lot rather than just sort of get scared into playing a ring.
Rashad has an issue with being overcautious.
Yeah.
Rashad has a little bit of that Bernardo Hopkins thing where when he really respects what you're showing him, he gets way too patient waiting for his opening. And I don't know that Cummins will do that.
Cummins doesn't seem to have that problem. Cummins' problem is more that he will leap in with his face and both hands out to try and punch you and get hit really hard.
Go for a double flying punch and get clocked on the chin.
Yeah. All right, that brings us to the first Fox Sports 1 prelim bout. John Lineker, Rob Font. And, I just can't wait to watch John Lineker punch some dude. And Rob Font is good. Rob Font is a good fighter. He has built a lot into his game. He looked great in his last fight. But he also looked in that Joey Gomez fight, like I rewatched it, and he really needed some time to figure out his timing and pick up like the pace and figure out where he could place his shots and how to just get in the right sneaky shots. Like he threw a lot of very like low power testing punches and kicks early in that fight and a lot of unset up kicks to try and gauge Joey Gomez and what Gomez was doing. And I think it's as simple as the fact that Lineker's not going to let him do any of that and is just going to throw him way, way, way into the deep end of the pool from point one. And while Font has power and a nicely diverse game and isn't a bad athlete and has long arms and he's bigger than Lineker, it's just like that problem of relentless. It's sort of the problem. Like Lineker gets away with what Luan Chagas got away with on the regional level at a much, much higher level, which is like, yeah, defensively, there's a lot not happening here, but your absolute absurd willingness to throw yourself at people and overwhelm them with a monstrous amount of aggression and body and mixed like combinations at all angles all the time just beats so many guys, and I don't see Rob Font being one of the guys it doesn't beat.
I don't share your same confidence in John Lineker's reliability as an aggressive fighter. I think of John Lineker as something of a brawler, which doesn't necessarily mean he always brawls. To me, it means he just always has in his mind to like pay you back or hurt you for doing something. And I've seen enough fights of John Lineker where he's fought somebody who is confident and yet maintains distance, where his volume is not there. Like the Bogotinov fight, where he did a lot of weight in staring. Even early on the Ian McCall fight, like that fight was Ian McCall's before Lineker went for a guillotine that completely terrified Uncle Creepy and made him abandon his game. Like that, and McCall was doing fine in that fight. And Rob Font is a very mobile bantamweight. He's a lot bigger and longer than John Lineker. I don't know. Like, how long can John Lineker go as a 5'3" bantamweight? How long is, because I'm pretty sure Rob Font's 6 inches taller than him and significantly longer of arm too. The thing with John Lineker is he has a much better success than a guy like Chagas because he does have really good technical offensive boxing. His hands are very sharp. He's got a good crisp jab. He doesn't use it a lot, but it's one of those jabs that makes you kind of jump. He stings you with it, and then he steps in. He mixes up the angles and the targets of his punches really, really well. And I actually don't think he's god-awful defensively. He's not like he's just sitting there with his hands down. He was in the Francisco Rivera fight, but Rivera gave him a brawl. That's the thing. Rivera gave him a brawl, and I don't think Rob Font will. I like Rob Font for the same reasons I liked Rivera, except Rob Font has the advantage of not being willing to give his opponent the fight they want. Like so far in his 2 UFC fights, he's looked like a really smart tactical fighter. So I kind of like Rob Font to win this fight. I think I just don't see John Lineker pouring it on him or being able to trap him. Like, it's not like John Lineker has incredible cage cutting footwork. He doesn't have a ton of variety. He will throw some kicks and everything, but it's mostly the boxing. And Rob Font's got this really weird, flexible game. He fights out of a pretty good team. I think he's at Sit Yard Tong Muay Thai. And he's got the grappling game to fall back on, too. And Lineker, I mean, he jumped for a guillotine when McCall got him, but, like, think of it like this. If John Lineker had not wrapped up that guillotine when McCall took him down, and that's a very easy technique to screw up, that guillotine as takedown defense is a very old school and a very unreliable method. And so if that didn't work, how different of that fight would have been? And how likely would it have been if, like, Ian McCall in 2015 would have taken 2 rounds off of John Lineker? It was kind of on its way to happening. So I don't know. I think John Lineker relies a little too much on hurting you to beat you. And when he hasn't been able to hurt his opponents, that's when he's had trouble, you know? Gaudenov, Gogatinov, McCall.
I mean, the Gaudenov fight was also just kind of Gaudenov jumping on a Hail Mary thing out of nowhere.
That's true.
Like, that was something that's also, you know, in as much as the Lineker-McCall fight may be unreplicable, the Gaudenov loss is also kind of unreplicable.
That's true. That's very fair. I just think Lineker needs to hurt you to beat you. I think he has basically shown that in all of his fights. Like, he has hurt everyone that he has beaten so far. Yeah, and I don't know if he can hurt Rob Font.
And the only guy he didn't beat, though, too, lately, other than Louis Gaudenov and his Hail Mary, was somebody who could really wrestle him and who he really had to worry about a wrestling threat, a constant wrestling threat, which he won't with Font. I mean, Font, the fact that Font is bigger and, you know, has a rangier, if Font can press that into a wrestling advantage, like that physical advantage, into just being able to get in and bully Lineker with takedowns and with a wrestling game, then I think he could really open up the fight and keep Lineker off of him. But, like, watching that Joey Gomez fight, and I realize Joey Gomez is a very long fighter as well, I just don't see... I don't see that Font has quite the kind of range game to keep Lineker from cutting him off, like to keep Lineker from swarming him.
But that's the thing is Lineker swarms and bursts. Like, I don't think you have to keep him off you for the whole fight. All you have to do is not try to scare him off when he does. Like, just get out of there, because he's not gonna be frightened. Like, that's what Rivera did. Rivera's like, fuck, I got to get him off of me, and started swinging with him. And Lineker loves that shit. He ate it up.
I know. I just don't know. I don't know that I trust that Font can avoid the burst. Like, I don't know that he has, like, he's willing, like I say, he's willing to throw up these, like, unset up low kicks and to just kind of try and feel out the early parts of the fight to try and probe and not really, and not even not sit down on things, but just to try and do a lot of, I don't know, just to land soft punches and see what comes back at him, basically. And I just feel like that's, I don't know, I don't feel like that's the right way to work with Lineker. Like, you really have to be active on the outside of staying away and keeping range, or of showing a takedown threat and freezing him with something.
Do you have that much faith in Lineker as a counterpuncher?
Not as a counterpuncher.
I mean, like, I don't know. To me, like, going with a throwaway punch and making Lineker lead so you can figure out what he offers and then hitting him back doesn't sound so bad to me.
It doesn't sound bad if I have more faith in Rob Font as somebody who can really, like, survive mixing it up like that.
Sure, okay.
You know, like, it sounds like a good plan if you're like TJ Dillashaw, you know? I feel like you have to be. I feel like Rob Font is going to have to show himself as an even more mobile and active fighter. It, like, somebody showing so many more looks that really do freeze Lineker or make him more, like, even more predictable than he is, for me to trust Rob Font to carry that.
Yeah, the thing with Lineker is he doesn't get like, there are two things you can do to a fighter. You can scare him off. Like, if you're an out fighter, you can scare them off by repaying them for something, or you can frustrate them. I don't think Lineker is easy to scare, but I think he does get frustrated. And we have seen him not happy with the way his opponents are fighting him in the past. He really wants you to stand in front of him, and he's happy to get hit if it means hitting you back, but he's not happy to get hit or to be evaded if it means he doesn't get to get a shot off in the process.
Yeah,
but Font would have to fight a pretty perfect fight to avoid being stung at some point.
Exactly. That's the thing. I just don't trust Font to play that game close enough to the bone, I guess, like, to just really be able to keep himself from getting confident and trying to, like, I don't know, I just don't trust him to stay out of the pocket and to not get hit at all. Like,
well, he can get hit some. I don't think Lineker is that crushing of a puncher. Lineker, like I said, he gets by because he mixes up his shots really well. I don't think he doesn't have many one-punch knockouts.
It's true. He's not a one-punch knockout artist, but he's able to create these swarms that really they create an overwhelming sense in opponents, sure. You know? Like, they create a somewhat inevitable sense of downfall of, like, okay, I got hit once or twice, and now I have to panic because I am going to get hit 5 or 6 or 7 more times.
John the Avalanche Lineker.
Very much. So I can't trust Font there. Like, Joey Gomez doesn't tell me enough, you know? It doesn't, and neither does George Roop. And that's really what it is to me. Like,
sure.
Not when compared to Ian McCall or Francisco Rivera, who
sure.
I just don't. And I think you're right. You're making good points. I like that you're picking Font, but I got to go with Lineker.
It's one of the other tough fights to call on this card. It's one of the really hard ones.
Odds on this fight: Lineker is the favorite, -147 to -200. Rob Font, the underdog, +155 down to +130. Seems fair. I think Lineker's going to get good odds because he's got much more name value. So
yeah, it feels fine. Yeah, it feels fine to me.
All right, and that brings us to a fight that I have infinite amount of troubles calling. So I'm going to let you lead. Francisco Trinaldo, Yancy Medeiros.
Yeah. It's a really tough one. The thing is, like, Medeiros has, if you were to go off of records, you would easily pick Francisco Trinaldo, right? Because he's on this crazy tear. He's got a bunch of good names on his win streak right now. And Medeiros has, like, losses, no contests, things like that. But Medeiros is one of those guys who is always more dangerous than his record seems. He's like a mix of Nick and Nate Diaz in his style. You know what I mean? Like, he's long and awkward like Nate is, but he's, like, aggressive and hittable like Nick is. So it's not necessarily a perfect blend, but it's not an easy one to deal with either. Like, he has his problems that are inherent given that style and that build. But the thing he really brings to the table is very good combination punching. He's very, very good at putting his punches together. He's got a really nice left uppercut that he likes to follow his cross with. Very sneaky. I think that's what he finished Eve Edwards. Did he fight Eve Edwards? For a moment, I mixed up Eve Edwards and Eve Chablet in my mind.
Yeah, Eve Edwards. He fought Eve Edwards and was getting kind of tooled before he knocked him out with an uppercut.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of Medeiros' fights have that kind of flavor, where it's not necessarily going that great for him. Personally, I thought he pretty clearly lost to John McDessie. He got the win, but he did have his moments. He landed good, clean punches, and he seems to be a pretty powerful striker and very opportunistic with his submissions as well, where Medeiros is that kind of guy where all it takes is one. He's not a great grappler, that's the thing, but he's got puncher's chance and grappler's chance more than most fighters do, where you give him one little opening, either on the feet or on the ground, and he will take it, and he will do his utmost to finish you from that position. And then, Trinaldo is such a weird fighter where he's a pretty good striker with a very reductive tool set. With his set of strikes, it's like straight left, body kick. There's very little really going on. Pawing jab. But he has a really nice sense of distance. He covers distance really, really quickly, shockingly quickly for a man of his age, because I think he's 37 years old. And then he likes to grind, but he's not actually an amazing grappler. He's pretty good on top because he's big and strong. And he's pretty good against the fence. But on the ground, really the best thing he has going for him is just that he's patient. He doesn't freak out when he's in a tough spot, because against really good grapplers, he does end up in tough spots. I don't think it'll necessarily be a problem for him here. I think really the only real difference in this fight is that Medeiros is just a lot more hittable than Trinaldo. And he's aggressive enough to make that a problem, because Trinaldo can counterpunch. Trinaldo can either come forward or move backwards. He's flexible enough that his limited set of tools has some variety to it. And the other thing, too, is Medeiros has lost twice now to southpaws who have hit him to the body. And I know Francisco Trinaldo can throw a mean body kick, and I know he can throw a hard straight left to the gut. And, if that's the problem for Medeiros, where his biggest defensive flaw is in body shots, then I think that might be an opening for Trinaldo. I wouldn't bank on it as being the way the fight ends, but it's just a little more weight on Trinaldo's side of the scale. So I like Francisco Trinaldo. I actually picked him in my Sherdog preview by first round TKO, which makes it sound like I think the fight is dominant, which I don't. I just think it probably happens fairly quickly. You know what I mean? It makes it sound like I think it's an easy pick, and it's not.
Yeah, no. This is one of those fights where when I'm watching it, this is one of those where I'm glad you had so much insight to give on each guy's style, because frankly, when I kind of watch them fight with both guys, I'm just like, what the fuck am I looking at? You guys, what are you doing? Especially
two games that shouldn't really work.
Especially with Medeiros. He has all of these really quick kind of varied combinations that he throws, where he'll pump out 2 or 3 jabs and something behind it. Or he'll jab, kick, and throw an uppercut, stuff like that. But at the same time, he just has this sort of ridiculous defensive openings that he leaves behind as he does it, where it's where does all this time go? How are you putting together all these combinations and not understanding that you still somehow leave this huge target right in front of people?
Yeah.
Watching that fight with McDessie, it's sort of you're going to throw a bunch of stuff that doesn't land, and then, you'll land with a good hook and then get countered right over, right behind it really hard. And
he's like a fighter who is wholly focused on offense. And to his credit, his offense, no matter where the fight goes, is very good. But his defense, no matter where the fight goes, is pretty bad. You know what I mean?
But I'm not even sold on the offense very good part. it just seems like it takes him so much time often to find his rhythm and his range. Sure. For a guy that's like as big and stretched out as he is, because even at 5'10", Medeiros is just really long, lightweight, like just has this massively wide frame to him. And it just, like, it seems like he spends a lot of time trying to figure out how to actually turn his offensive work into meaningful combinations that land.
That's true, yeah.
And so even when he gets a lot of, like, you know, you look at most of his finishes, they end up being submissions, and they aren't even necessarily, like, some of them will be behind him hurting somebody, but a lot too are just kind of, I saw an opening suddenly and I jumped on it, and that won me the fight. You know, like the Damon Jackson fight where he just sort of jumped on this bulldog choke and choked him out.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, it's just, he's so funky. Like, it just seems like from 1 minute to the next, he can go from entirely functionless to entirely functional as an offensive fighter. Like, he will just spend a minute throwing a bunch of stuff, none of which works for him at all. And then the next minute, he'll suddenly, like, land 10 strikes. And you're like, where did this come from? And, yeah, Trinaldo's just, I don't know. Trinaldo's another fighter who, I have so much trouble figuring out his game from any one fight to the next.
It's almost more frustrating than Medeiros because his game consistently works, which is confusing.
It is. Like, he consistently makes things happen and gets things done, and it is with this, like, super limited skill set, and you keep thinking of him as, like, oh, he's going to, like, cage grind, or he's going to take somebody down and pressure them or something, and then he'll come out and he'll, like, do this really functional in and out kickboxing style, and then the next fight it'll be, I don't know, like, both these guys just caused me all sorts of problems, which is why, like I say, I'm kind of glad you led, and I don't know, part of me wants to just take a chance pick on Medeiros just because I feel like Trinaldo's number is going to get called at some point where this style he has just is going to stop working. Like, he can't consistently out kickbox people at lightweight.
It would be cosmically perfect if on the tail of 3 very impressive names, Park, Laprise, Pearson, then he goes and fights like the least consistent lightweight on the roster and gets finished.
Yeah, like I could easily see it happening. You know, the guy who let Akbar Areola go to a decision with him, just like...
Hey, Areola is not as bad as you say he is. Remember what he did to Jake Matthews?
I remember Jake Matthews figuring out what he was letting Akbar Areola do to him and then turning around.
But you mocked me for saying that Areola could give Matthews problems, and he did. He hurt him badly.
Yeah, but it was also, I think that's a damning testament to, you know, the difference between that Jake Matthews and the Jake Matthews that then went and fought... what's his name?
I keep wanting to say Chris
Johnny
Wade.
Case.
Johnny Case, yeah.
Johnny Case, who went out and fought Johnny Case. Like, I feel like that was sort of like the wake-up call for Jake Matthews' career of, like, you are letting this...
He's good enough to be a wake-up call, Zane. That's all I'm saying. He's yet another fighter with a horribly dysfunctional game that still manages to make it work.
Yeah, the smart pick is Trinaldo. Trinaldo is much more consistent, especially as a striker. He tends to know exactly what he wants to do moment to moment. He sits down on his game, on his strikes a lot more. Learned.
That is the virtue of only having like 5 techniques to choose from. It's like,
yeah,
you know what you're doing. And Trinaldo doesn't get bored of throwing him either. Like, a lot of guys have that problem. He's completely content to throw the straight left over and over and over again.
Yep. He's very willing to just draw out his functional game round after round after round, and Medeiros seems he seems to almost like confuse himself by being spoiled for choice.
Yeah, he's like dissatisfied with his wealth of options.
Yeah, and so Trinaldo is the sensible pick. But I have this sneaking feeling that Medeiros is going to get some like funky guillotine or something and win, or I don't know, just clock Trinaldo with a counter hook or something. And
Zane, Masarunduba, lightweight champion 2017.
All right, you know what? I'm gonna pick Medeiros for the hell of it.
Oh shit!
Not get this gut feeling out of my head that this fight's just gonna be weird. Odds on this fight: Trinaldo is a large favorite, -216 to -250. Medeiros, the underdog, +211 to +175. It's not maybe wide, but I don't know.
What odds could you possibly accurately prescribe for this fight? It's like, given the records, it should be much wider. Given the fighters, it should be really narrow. None of them feel right.
Yeah. All right. I spent too much time on that. So, Thiago Santos, Nate Marquardt up next. I feel a little dumb because I was absolutely sure that Nate Marquardt would get clocked by CB Dalloway, but CB Dalloway never fails to unimpress. So
I think I've probably, on my Sherdog previews, because that was one of them, I believe. I think I probably picked 5 or 6 fights as my sure thing pick that went disastrously wrong, and that was one of them. Like, who called that? Nobody saw that coming.
No, but CB Dalloway is one of those guys who, like, if ever a fighter, he's kind of like Diego Brandao without all of the extra baggage that goes with being Diego Brandao.
Sure.
Where, like, if there's ever a fighter that you're like, or maybe, where you're just like, he could be doing really well, but something's just, disaster will strike this man at some point.
He's also Diego Brandao without the jiu-jitsu. It must be.
Yeah, it's true. But, CB Dalloway just has this amazing ability to get punched really, really hard. And that's a really remarkable talent. One that Thiago Santos does not quite share. Thiago Santos is one of those fighters who's more like, he's really not a good puncher, but he's so, at this point, he's just become very he's just become very defensive in picking his spots because of that. Yeah. He will just stay outside and move and move and move and move and move until he feels like he has just the right opportunity to unleash a wild flurry on you. And I think that will work well for him against Marquardt. I think that Marquardt is just not, he's not the kind of guy who is. I don't trust him to keep up with guys at this point, basically. I don't trust him to get in a battle where somebody's going to pick at him with powerful kicks from the outside and just survive that long term. Like the Dalloway fight, Dalloway had a lot of confidence in his boxing that he did not really deserve to have, and Thiago Santos is not that fighter. I don't think Thiago Santos has those same kind of concerns. And frankly, after Santos's fight over who did he fight last? Elias Theodorou. Like, he really did a very good job picking just the right spots in that fight, all fight. And I realized that Marquardt's shown himself to be a more talented striker over time, over and over again than Theodorou, but he's also a more shop-worn fighter. Yeah. So
I got to pick Dalloway is that he just didn't. His style did not survive the transition from Jose Benavidez Sr. to Chaz Turner, the striking coaches. He would be great. He could be really good with a guy like Mark Henry or something. Someone with who makes good wrestle boxers. He still has the talent. But the thing is like Marquardt in that fight, I feel like I should be appreciating Nate Marquardt right now more than I actually am. At the moment, I'm just not excited to see him fight because I've seen him get wrecked a bunch. But he's also doing a thing that I love, which is a veteran fighter coming out and just occasionally pasting a guy who, by all rights, should beat him. Like that was even the case in the Tyron Woodley fight. It was the case against James Tahuna. It was the case against CB Dalloway. Like all of these times, Nate Marquardt comes out. You've seen him get beat up a bunch. He's too old. He's too shop-worn, and then he pulls something out of his hat. He's got a deep bag of tricks. He's very crafty. He's never been a great defensive fighter. It's always been the offensive, the weird, crazy combination striking, the submissions. That's always been Marquardt's A game, but in kind of becoming a little more defensive, it's almost like he's hidden the potency of that offense, where he's kind of like backing off and waiting, and the counter right hand he blasted Dalloway with was a thing of beauty, and it was perfectly timed, and Dalloway felt at that point like he had the edge in the fight, which worked to Marquardt's favor. Problem is, I don't think Santos is going to come lurching into the pocket with a punch like that and let himself get countered. He's a stiff boxer. He's not a great puncher, and he's very awkward and really muscles his punches. But really, he's best with his kicks, and when you give him kicking range, he will take kicking range. And Marquardt has always been best from that long range, where he can jump in with those straight shots and the kicks. And so I just think Santos is going to be able to set him up with body kicks and head kicks and get him out of there. Because the biggest problem here is that if Marquardt can't get you to make a mistake, then he really starts to pay for the fact that he doesn't have great defense and doesn't have a great chin. It's worse than ever. So I think Thiago Santos probably head kicks him. But hell, if Marquardt gets another win, another like crazy stoppage win, I will really start to appreciate what he's doing here, because it shouldn't be happening at all at this point, and it happens a lot more than I expected to.
Yeah, it's true. Marquardt is one of those fighters who kind of in that Patrick Cote sort of way, where there's a while where you're just like, I really am not excited for this guy at all. And then Cote just kept turning things around. You're like, oh, shit, well, I guess if you're going to do the thing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. He's very much like Cote.
Yeah. On that note, though, Santos is a heavy favorite, minus 345 to minus 440, and Nate Marquardt, the underdog, plus 348 down to plus 270. I think that's reasonable. Honestly, I do think that Marquardt's just going to concede that range to Santos too often. And
can I get a prop bet odds for like inside the distance or less than 1.5 rounds or something like that?
Let's see. Santos wins inside the distance, minus 170.
It's better.
Better. Let's see. Santos in round 1 is plus 105. So even there, you're not getting great odds. Santos, let's see.
For me, on my book, under 1.5 rounds is minus 140. Just under 1.5 in general, which is not a bad bet because both these guys are finishers.
Let's see. Yeah, under 1.5 rounds, minus 139.
It's not terrible.
Yeah, or you can say fight starts round 2 is minus 125, but that seems like betting against type. Either way, I expect Santos to look good in that fight. That brings us to the FS1 prelims headliner, Demian Maia versus Matt Brown.
I can't complain about UFC matchmaking on this one because evidently Matt Brown asked for this fight because he is a madman. It's not impossible that Matt Brown wins this fight. Matt Brown is Matt Brown. Demian Maia has gotten tired in the past, and I think that is the biggest thing working against him here. But despite that, Demian Maia, exhausted in the 3rd round, still managed to get Rory McDonald down in that round. Like, that fight, because Maia dominated the 1st round, McDonald had his way in the 2nd round, and the 3rd round comes around, it was absolutely razor close. That was the decider, and even though Maia seemed to be done, he dragged McDonald down, and it was like a huge sigh of relief for McDonald fans when he managed to get back up. Because you definitely don't get up easily when a fresh Maia is on top of you. Brown he's got good striking. He's aggressive. He puts his strikes together really well. Offensively, he has a ton to offer. But really, like, a lot of that comes in the clinch. And even when he fought Johnny Hendricks, he got some shots off in the clinch. He landed some really nice knees, some good elbows. But just as in that fight, how good of an idea is it to have your best range be like this close to that person having you on your back? And I think Maia doesn't have what Hendricks has in terms of that really strong, explosive wrestling, but we've talked about it many times on this show. He's a very effective wrestler. He sticks to you like glue. He's even brought back nowadays a little more of like the pulling half guard and then sweeping you thing he used to do in the day. And he's just so confident in his jiu-jitsu that he can afford to do that. And so it's like the first 2 rounds are almost guaranteed to go to Maia in my mind. And then if he gets tired, and if he doesn't submit Matt Brown, which is not unlikely, I think Matt Brown's a lot more comfortable on the ground than he used to be. But unless he gets tired, I think the 3rd round will be the same thing, because I don't know. It's like a classic grappler versus striker matchup, and it's like we've always come to expect the grapplers to win, and Maia's a grappler unlike most. So I say Demian Maia by unanimous decision.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against Maia here. I'm glad this fight's happening. Matt Brown, he needs to be in top level fights. Like, that's just the thing for me. I don't, if it's a bad matchup for him, so what? He's a great fighter. Let him take his lickings. I don't care. It's not like what am I protecting Matt Brown from?
That's true, and he doesn't seem to care. He asked for the fight. He's like, I think he probably asked for it because he knows it's one he's not expected to win. He's like, I'll shock him when I win this. So
yeah.
let him have his way.
If he doesn't, that's fine too. He's a great fighter. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just you look at the fights that Matt Brown has won over the last few years, and it's Tim Means, Eric Silva, Mike Pyle, Jordan Meehan, Mike Swick, Luis Ramos, Stephen Thompson, and there's a pretty notable theme there. They're either guys that are very willing strikers, or they are guys who aren't the greatest athletes in the world, who even if they're good grapplers are not necessarily, they can't out tough Matt Brown. Like, they're not the toughest guys in the world. Yeah. They're Eric Silva, who is a great grappler for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes.
He's a fantastic grappler for 2 minutes, actually.
Yeah, he's a fantastic grappler for 2 minutes. And in that Hendricks fight, he got the clinch a lot, and Hendricks just put him on his back. Like, Hendricks was either all the way out, or when it got in close, Hendricks just took him down.
Yeah.
And it was a method that he could use to consistently overwhelm Matt Brown. And frankly, as much credit as Hendricks should get as a great wrestler, Hendricks has not been an amazingly better MMA wrestler than Demian Maia. He's certainly not a better top controlling wrestler. He's a bit like Patrick Cummins in that he's got this functional power wrestling game, where then if he actually has to land a lot of ground and pound or anything like that, he's more likely to just let you back up than he is to keep you down. Hendricks has always been about, like, take you down, punch you on your way up, then when you're back to your feet, take you down again. And Maia is, nobody out wrestles Demian Maia, really. Like,
nobody, yeah.
And so at that point,
Jake Shields out-wrestled him.
Jake Shields out-wrestled him. And Jake Shields is a certified badass. We all know this.
Jake Shields is the greatest, so.
Yeah, Jake Shields is the best. He's only gotten better since he left the UFC. Like, my appreciation for and love of Jake Shields has only grown immensely since he's out of the UFC. And he seems to give fewer fucks than ever now.
Yeah, did you see his grappling match with Agazarm?
Yes.
Ooh, it was amazing. So many bitch slaps.
So, Maia, like, I know he's going to take Matt Brown down. He took Rory McDonald down. He took Gunnar Nelson down with ease. He took Ryan LaFleur down. Like, I know he's going to take Matt Brown down to the mat. And once he does, he's going to control him and he's going to win. And that's all there is to it. But I don't care. I'm happy to see this fight. I'm happy to watch Demian Maia do his thing. And if Matt Brown somehow pulls it off, that would be fucking amazing.
It would be amazing if Matt Brown came in like Alex White did against Artem Lobov, and he was like, I'm a boxer now. And he just like stuck him with the jab and moved around from range. That would be incredible.
That would be totally incredible. Odds on this fight, Demian Maia is a favorite, -290 to -350. Matt Brown is the underdog, +283 to +215. All seems right to me.
Feels fine.
That brings us to the first pay-per-view main card fight, Warlley Alves versus Bryan Barberena. And man, if ever, like, I've said this at a few points before, but sometimes winning the big underdog fight that people don't expect you to win can be like the worst thing for your career.
Yeah, or like getting the big name win. Like all the guys right now swarming to be the one to fight BJ Penn. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you're going to get that win. And then, like, because you beat a completely broken down BJ Penn, you're going to get matched with, like, Max Holloway or some shit and just get destroyed.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you beat BJ Penn. Now time to fight Chad Mendez. He needs to fight.
here's Dennis even like a guy like Dennis Bermudez. Like, it's just a huge step up.
Exactly. And so this feels like that's what happened to Bryan Barberena. It's like, yeah, I beat Sage Northcutt. Okay, now fight Warlley Alves in Brazil.
He beat Sage Northcutt. Now he gets to fight super Sage Northcutt. Like the Sage Northcutt that actually has a developed game.
Yes. And, Warlley Alves, not only does he look like he's 40, but he has the sort of like, he does not have the body he doesn't have the body of a 25-year-old. Like, he has that like freakish Yoel Romero athleticism where it's just kind of this old man builtness where, I don't know, it's both a freakish athleticism and a power and strength to it that seems very trustworthy. You know what I mean?
Zane, I think some of your deeper-seated feelings about Warlley Alves are coming out in this conversation.
It's true.
Alves has a muscular body that seems trustworthy.
If he held me close, I'd probably get choked out. If he held me close, it's probably because I would be getting strangled. But
don't say these kinds of things about any of the Nogueira brothers, by the way. They're not cool with this sort of crossover.
Anyway, Alves is just an amazingly powerful athlete, and his striking is functional to the point that he needs it to be, and he knows what he needs out of it. Like, he seems like he knows. I felt like that Joban fight, especially once he got, as much as people like to talk about how he lost that fight, once he realized he could not just spank Joban and get him out of there in a minute, it fell back into this very like, okay, just throw a few shots, keep him off of me, keep this fight where I keep myself with the range and time I need to set up the things I need to do to keep this fight in control. Yeah. Like
we have talked about him learning a lesson from that fight, but he learned a lesson in that fight. He adapted remarkably well for getting shit kicked early on.
Yeah, and then, since then we've seen in like the Nordine Taleb fight, he just played this patient game, kind of waited Taleb out, hit him hard a few times, kept the fight at the pace he needed to, and then the moment Taleb gave him any opening at all, just wrecked him. And Covington tried to pressure him and take away that patience in that time and just put himself straight into a guillotine and got himself choked out. And that's for a guy like Barberena, it's really hard to see what he does with that because he's not a great athlete. He's a guy who's gotten through the regionals off of his toughness and his ability to be aggressive and put volume on people and just be, to keep a pace for round after round. He's the kind of guy who's going to keep after you throwing, I don't know, like 8 strikes a minute or whatever. Well, that's low, but whatever. Keeping a good pace round after round after round. And because of that, he tends to either need guys who are going to quit under that pressure and under that pace, or he needs guys that aren't as good an athlete as him who can't bully him off of that pace.
Yeah.
And Warlley Alves is neither of those things. Warlley Alves is not going to quit. He's incredibly tough and durable, and he can absolutely, I think, break Barberena off of his game, freeze him, stall him, make him have to think twice, and then cinch something up. So I got to pick Alves by submission.
Yeah, it's Barberena. He has a few things going for him. He's the kind of fighter that I always like. I find it really easy to root for these workman-like fighters. He doesn't just push a pace, but he kind of matches pace as well. Like, one of the best things he has going for him is that even though he's hittable and he's not that fast, if you hit Barberena, he's going to try to hit you back right away. That happened with Sage Northcutt. Like, it was the first time Northcutt hit somebody, and not only did they didn't give a damn if they got hit, but they hit him right back. And he was like, ooh, he quickly ran out of ideas because he felt like this isn't working. Like, I'm hitting him with these shots, but it's not working like I wanted to. And that's the kind of test a guy like Barberena puts you through. Yep. And he's pretty good in the clinch. He's big and tall, and he's awkward. But, Alves is the same level of athlete as Sage Northcutt, with a little more experience.
A better gym.
A better gym, yeah, unless Northcutt is officially at TriStar now, but a better gym. He's certainly better trained up to this point. Yeah. And we've already seen him go through difficult situations and be fine. As much as I'm certain Alan Jouban should have won that fight, Warlley Alves did not come out of it actually looking altogether bad. He came out of it looking like a young fighter who was way too overconfident and still managed to keep from completely falling off the rails when it was revealed that he couldn't just walk over everyone he faced. So,
yeah, it's the Sage. That was like, Warlley Alves' Bryan Barberena Sage Northcutt fight, except instead of being against Bryan Barberena, it was against Alan Jouban.
Yeah, like a much more dangerous, more powerful fighter. It's Warlley Alves all the way. I also think he will submit Barberena in this fight.
Yep. Odds on this: Warlley Alves is the favorite, minus 527, up to minus 650. Barberena, the underdog, plus 501, down to plus 360. And I'm fine with that. You get a super athletic mismatch like this, and Barberena not being a surefire skill finisher who's just like got great knockout power or got an amazing submission game that he can fall back onto. And it's really hard to see a reasonable path to victory for Bryan Barberena, unless he just catches, lightning in a bottle and somehow hurts Alves really badly. So that brings us to Mauricio Hua versus Corey Anderson.
How much do you love watching Shogun Hua fight these days, Zane?
Not a lot. You know what? Not even a little. No, I don't.
You have him. It probably helps you that you embraced long ago the role of the guy who no longer believes in Shogun Hua.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't have a chance anymore, and you're happy with that, or you're satisfied with it, which is a good way to go. The Shogun has not looked terrible in all of his recent fights. He's had many competitive moments. He was fine, aside from getting stung. He recovered very well against Little Nog. He had a ton of great moments in the rematch with Dan Henderson before getting clipped. He
didn't have any great moments in that OSP fight. Let's just be clear about that.
No, he got destroyed there. He beat up James Tahuna. Chael Sonnen destroyed him, but he also had quite a few moments, more than you would definitely expect, against Alexander Gustafsson. He has always had these moments. I think the big problem for Shogun is he's a guy whose decline started happening a long time ago. But unlike a guy like Anderson Silva, who's probably been declining for a while, but has like enough craft and defensive ability and is patient enough to make it work, Shogun hasn't been able to let go of the dynamic fighter that he once was. So, and it's hampered him anyway, because like a Roy Jones, he was so able to push this crazy pace and throw these insane flying kicks and just be this really dynamic, explosive striker, that when that's gone, he didn't have all of the skeleton of a veteran's game to fall back on. So he is like a veteran who has, through much trial and tribulation, learned to be a veteran. He's been forced to learn it from scratch, where veterans usually accumulate that knowledge over the course of their career. Shogun didn't really do that. And so he's done fairly well. Like the Nogueira fight I thought was really nice. It was like Shogun, he's like, I'm gonna get aggressive now, I'm gonna go after him. And he gets clipped. He's like, all right, I'll be old Shogun. And old Shogun was okay. Just like it was in the Dan Henderson fight. Like, he got caught, but he looked fine in that fight. He looked like a guy who had settled into a sort of game. That makes him dangerous enough for Corey Anderson. That's the thing. Corey Anderson is very young, very inexperienced. Shogun is kind of like I still think he's faster than John Vellante, and his game is fairly similar. So he's kind of a faster John Vellante, which is great for Anderson because he needs to, for him, it'll be a chance for him to be like, here's a guy who's going to kick my legs. I'm going to have to worry about defending kicks to the body and legs. He's going to sling a big right hand at me, and I'm going to have to stay safe and use my wrestling and my boxing to protect myself. I think Corey Anderson can do that. I think he throws enough volume. I think he's developing his footwork and his defense at a pretty decent clip. And fortunately for him, Shogun does not throw the kind of combinations Tom Lawler was throwing at him in the last fight, which gave him some problems. Because Tom Lawler came into that fight looking like he was bound and determined to never throw less than 3 punches at a time, and it gave Anderson some issues. But Shogun's not going to do that. He could absolutely clip Corey Anderson. He could absolutely ravage his legs and his body with kicks because Anderson wasn't defending them at all in that John Vellante fight. But I also think Anderson has grown since that fight, and Hua is really only learning to settle into this style. You know, he's not growing anymore in any notable way. He's like becoming. But the other interesting thing about this matchup, it's Mark Henry versus Rafael Cordeiro. So I'm really interested to see how these two guys, how their coaches have prepared them for each other, because those are two of my favorite coaches in the sport. So,
yeah, I think the big thing for me is just that, and you know, sometimes this is wrong and goes away, it changes. I'm always a little skeptical of myself when I start feeling this way, because like Junior Dos Santos, after that, you know, in his last fight, after that Overeem fight, suddenly you're just like, wait, never in a million years did I expect Junior Dos Santos to come back and look like he can take a punch. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
And right now I am absolutely, like, I feel absolutely certain, so I'm questioning that feeling, that Shogun just cannot take a hard punch right now. And that is like the biggest problem for me here, is that Anderson is very defensively open to getting clocked still. Like, he's becoming a better striker and a more trustworthy striker, and he's becoming better, but he's young. He's a super raw fighter still. He's, you know, this is a guy who started fighting in 2013.
Yeah.
Like 3 years, less than, you know, just 3 years ago. Exactly. Started fighting. So he has to be raw. But he can take enough punishment to hit Shogun once. Cleanly. And in that Little Nog fight, like, even that was enough to hurt him really, really badly.
It wasn't even a clean shot. It was like a glancing left to the side of the jaw. The thing is, Shogun Hua is not Robbie Lawler, but he was hard to finish in that fight. He was hard to put away altogether, because Anderson, I wouldn't say Anderson's a much more powerful puncher than Nogueira. They're both
Anderson does not have great striking power.
And when Shogun was hurt, like, once it became clear Nogueira was not on the verge of finishing him, he started clipping him with counters. He started nailing him with his back to the fence. And, like, if Anderson gets carried away, that's an issue. The one thing I actually forgot to mention, Corey Anderson can wrestle. That's a really big help for him.
Yes. That's the thing, is that unlike the Little Nog fight, if Anderson hurts Shogun, then I think he can just take him down and work him over. And I don't think he lets Shogun off the hook in the way that Little Nog did, because Little Nog is also not a very powerful puncher. And just, you know, Shogun still has that ability to throw scary, scary power shots at you if he feels trapped.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have enough. I don't have any faith in Shogun and Anderson. This is going to be an interesting fight for him, because I don't know that he has the power to finish it quickly. So he may have to really actually survive some things. And
that's how I feel. He's going to have to take a strategic approach. He's going to have to like base it on what will work over a long period of time, because I don't think either. Even if Shogun looks like he can't take a punch anymore, like, Dan Henderson and OSP are the guys who've been hurting him. You know what I mean? And Little Nog did, but Little Nog couldn't put him away. And so if Anderson's in the same boat, he's going to have to come with a full 3-round game plan. I
might pick Anderson by TKO round 2 if he can actually just keep taking him down and piling up damage. Yeah. But, that's...
He can force a stoppage.
Yeah, if he can force a stoppage. But it'll be an interesting fight because Anderson still... at light heavyweight, not being able to finish people is a massive liability. Like, it is just honestly a huge problem for a fighter. Like, you cannot... Very few fighters develop the amount of craft they need to be able to survive long-term in that division without regularly getting stoppage wins.
I will say, though, like, Corey Anderson does have the potential to be that kind of fighter because he's, like, light and quick and small. He could be a light heavyweight Frankie Edgar, where, you can tag him some, but he puts a ton of volume out there. He moves way faster than everyone else in the division. He can take you down and sit in half guard and beat you up, where, he has a consistent – because, like, Mark Henry's really good at bringing those consistent approaches on a fighter. It's a very strategic approach.
Odds on that fight – Corey Anderson is the favorite, -200 down to -265. Mauricio Hua, the favorite, or the underdog, +216 down to +162. I think there's some nostalgia in those odds, but I'm not surprised. I like this fight because it's rare to see in the UFC a young fighter with no real name value whatsoever or interest just get booked for a good fight against a fighter who pretty much only has name value left. Like, Shogun is really only valuable in the UFC these days as a name fighter that you put on a card to attract more interest.
Yeah, he's like Penn for Seaver or Miller. Yeah. Like, that's a great building fight.
Usually, like Penn or Cole, like Penn, you get those fighters get he gets Cole Miller, or
they get like legacy matchups rather than building. Dennis. It's a torch passing fight. It's very good. If I'm Corey Anderson's manager, what I'm doing for this is we take this fight, Anderson gets this win, and then you pull back a little bit. You don't vault him into the next one. You're like, okay, let's fight another guy who just came off a loss or something, so that you let him get a tough win, and then he gets his confidence up. You know what I mean? You kind of go up in stages.
It's a good big win that can get him some name value, and if you're smart, you don't vault him right into fighting, I don't know, fighting Anthony Johnson. If Anthony Johnson, next, Anthony Johnson needs to fight, just Corey Anderson, Anthony Johnson.
Or even a guy like Jimmy Manuwa or something. Just not yet. Just hold off. Let him beat up some other old decrepit dude. Give him a chance.
Yeah, it's true. That brings us to not the co-main event, but the co-main event. Cris Cyborg versus Leslie Smith. You got 20 seconds or less to analyze this fight.
I have less time than the fight will last to analyze the fight. Or more time, actually. I like Leslie Smith. Big fan. She is way too defensively open, way too willing to trade punches. Cyborg is one of the very best female fighters that has ever done MMA, so I think she is going to knock Leslie Smith out.
Yeah. Cris Cyborg, knockout, round 1. Leslie Smith, not only is she very defensively open, but she's not a powerful striker. She needs to really pile up a lot of volume, and if Rin Nakai is clipping you,
my hope, I don't have any faith in this, but my hope is that, like she did in the Nakai fight, Leslie Smith comes in with a different approach. Because in the Nakai fight, she's like, all right, you're not going to be regular Leslie Smith. You're going to stay really low. You're going to jab more, and you're going to throw a lot of uppercuts to keep her from level changing. If she does that in this fight, and she's like, all right, you're not going to be aggressive. You're going to lay back and keep her at distance. She could actually survive for a little bit, but I don't have faith that she will do that.
No, I think the Nakai thing was just like, plan for the takedown threat. This is going to be, well, she's a striker, I'm a striker.
I hope Leslie Smith does not have that mentality. But I hope so, she probably does. She's like, well, we both like to punch, and just runs into the first right hand Cyborg throws. Yeah,
I get that feeling. All right, so Leslie Smith is the underdog here, plus 1190, down to plus 610. These are actually better odds than a lot of Cyborg's recent opponents have gotten.
Cyborg's minus 1,700 on one book.
Cyborg is the favorite, minus 1,700 down to minus 1,800 down to minus 1,100.
I guess at a certain point, the odds are really just a formality.
Let's see. Do they have a specific Cyborg wins by KO in round one? Now they have Cyborg wins by KO, which is minus 485, and Cyborg wins in round one is minus 200, minus 189 on Cyborg in round one.
Ooh, that is not a bad bet.
Yeah, like, does anybody really see Leslie Smith going to round two?
Absurdly, I picked her to be finished in round two in my preview. I think it was just my vain hope that she would come in and fight really smart.
Yeah. Even then, it's just Cyborg's the kind of person who will finish you at 455 of round one if you're fighting smart,
Yeah.
So that brings us to middleweight bout, Jacare versus Belfort, and this is an interesting fight. I like it. I'm glad it's happening, mostly because I don't want to see Belfort in another title fight, and I think that having him actually face other elite top of the division middleweights is the best way to keep him out of another title fight.
Sure.
Rather than being like, hey, fight CB Dollaway. Oh, you beat CB Dollaway. Time for a title fight now. That seems that I want that not to happen. And there's nothing against Vitor Belfort, but like Uriah Faber and countless other fighters, or not countless other fighters, but several other fighters out there, I just get tired of seeing these dudes fight for the belt over and over again. And the biggest thing for me here is going by recent Vitor Belfort performances. I don't have faith that Belfort can deliver a strong, I don't have faith that Belfort can deliver a strong performance that takes a while. I don't know that he's ever really become a more confident fighter, because it's never really necessarily been about gas tank for Belfort. It's just about am I demolishing you early? Oh, I'm not? Well, shit, then I'm in major trouble.
Yeah, he's always been a front runner. He's not got tired so much as he has, lost his nerve.
Lost his nerve, yeah. And with Jacare, Jacare, we saw him in trouble early against Yoel Romero, but Jacare does not go out easily. He's very tough, and he's a very functional fighter at this point. And if Belfort rushes him, then blitzes him, then I think that Jacare will just take him down and get him down. And on the ground, Belfort is, even when he's a good grappler, he's still very much that really triggers a lot of the anxiety, and he fights like an anxious fighter. We did with Chris Weidman. He blitzed Chris Weidman, could, even hurt Chris Weidman a little, could not put him away, immediately got taken down, and then just tried to punch him from while Chris Weidman had him mounted. And it's just the end is on its way, fast approaching. He's also one of the few fighters where, you really see some of the physical decline going on with the lack of TRT and the lack of testosterone. He seems to be getting out of shape out of camps and then getting back in shape in camps, and that's rarely a good sign. So I think there are just too many things here going on for me to pick anyone other than Jacare.
Yeah, it's pretty easy for me. The only real problem here for Jacare is that he's a low-volume striker.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't throw a lot. He will do a minute of stalking for every 2 or 3 punch combination he throws, but he will counter you pretty well. He's not over-aggressive, which is good for him against a guy like Belfort. He doesn't, Belfort's a pretty good counter striker, and he doesn't lunge in or go crazy. And he's a very good wrestler, very, very good especially for a guy with a jiu-jitsu background. He was great as a grappler, and he's great as an MMA fighter. I still have occasional flashbacks of the fight with Luke Rockhold for Belfort, where he was stuffing takedowns like nobody's business. But I think that fight was an outlier for a multitude of reasons. I think post-TRT, Vitor just doesn't have the ability to do that. I don't think he really became a much better grappler so much as he was freakishly strong and fast, and now he hasn't really looked that way. Like, he had easily taken down by Weidman. Jacare is he is a better takedown artist than Rockhold anyway. Rockhold's always been a really good counter wrestler.
Yeah.
Jacare is a very good offensive wrestler. So I think it's Jacare corners Belfort and drags him down and submits him. Probably doesn't take too long.
Yeah, Rockhold doesn't necessarily have the best frame for being a great offensive wrestler. Being really, like, tall and lanky makes it harder to get it. Like, Belfort's not a really tall dude, and he's kind of a brick shithouse. So it's kind of hard to get in low on somebody like Rockhold, or for Rockhold to get in low and on his hips and take him down. Whereas Jacare doesn't have that problem. Jacare is also kind of a brick shithouse.
Rockhold will, like, collapse on top of you while you try to take him down and wrap you up. But to see how good his wrestling is, look at the fight with Jacare, because Jacare is a very good offensive wrestler, and he could not get Rockhold down.
Yeah.
But I think he will get Belfort down.
Yeah, I do too. And even if he doesn't, like, I don't know. Belfort can certainly always land a KO punch. Like, there's just that can happen, but I think Jacare just tends to keep himself safe enough that I don't think it will. Or if it does, then I see it going a bit like the old Romero fight, where Romero, lands this big kill shot. Jacare is hurt, but he can keep surviving and force the kind of scrambles and force the fight he needs to wear Belfort out and to sap his confidence. So, too many reasons to pick Jacare. Lightning can strike, of course, but I don't like to pick fights based on, if he lands that big lucky shot, then.
Well, especially when you saw Romero do that to Jacare and saw how well Jacare recovered.
Yep, exactly. That brings us to the odds. Odds on that fight. Souza is the favorite, minus 270 down to minus 330. Vitor Belfort, the underdog, plus 269 down to plus 225. And that brings us to the main event. Take it.
This fight's awesome. I love this fight. I think Stipe Miocic is a very good challenger. I know he's not the one that they wanted, but frankly, I'd rather see a fresh challenger against Werdum than watch a Velasquez rematch just yet. Rematches are sometimes very warranted. I'm sure the Velasquez-Werdum rematch would have been a great fight, as the first one was, because it was a fantastic heavyweight matchup. But, it's good to see some fresh blood in there. Give Kane a chance. Also, for Kane's sake, give him a chance to beat somebody again. Man, I think both these guys have a fairly difficult task on their hands when it comes to planning for the other. Fabrício Werdum is a pretty poor defensive fighter. His striking defense is pretty garbage. It gets better as the fight goes on, and he's not easy to hit because he keeps you at range pretty well or wraps you up in the clinch when you get close. But if you can force an exchange or create a counter opportunity, you can hit Fabrício Werdum hard and clean. To his credit, he takes shots really, really well. I think that has actually been undersold over the course of his career because he has been so willing to go down. A lot of fights where it's like Werdum loses his balance and then submits you, or gets hurt and then submits you. He tried it in the Mark Hunt fight. I think he said that was the hardest shot he'd ever taken, but I don't think he seemed that hurt. If you looked at him when he ate that right hand from Mark Hunt, his eyes were clear. He was looking at Hunt the whole time. He waited to see if he would jump on him so he could go for a triangle, just like he did to Fedor. And so I think Werdum is very difficult to hurt. He took a hell of a lot of shots in that Cain Velasquez fight. Ate him better than Velasquez did, at the very least. And that makes it pretty tough for Miocic, because Miocic, I think his best shot here is to stick to the middle range as much as possible. Because if he's out at long range, Werdum has the reach advantage and the height advantage. He has the kicking game to complement his arms, and he's got a really great jab, and he works off of his jab really, really well. Werdum is very intelligent with how he pieces his shots together after the jab. There are tons of sequences you could recall from the Velasquez fight where Velasquez was slipping and bobbing back and forth, and Werdum was throwing the jab to get him to move and then catching him when he moved with the follow-up punch because he knew that he could force him to evade and then clip him when he thought he was safe. And if Miocic ends up on the outside of that, he's not a great defensive fighter himself. He looked better than ever in that Mark Hunt fight, and I think he actually seemed to have tightened up some of his boxing in his last 2 fights. But he's not a great defensive fighter, and he's jabbable, and he's not as big as Werdum. So he's not as long as Werdum, so that's a problem. And then if he gets in too close, Werdum will clinch with him. And I don't think Werdum is an amazing clinch fighter. His game is kind of weirdly limited, but he's very effective. He stifled Cain Velasquez there, which is not an easy task. And Miocic is not Cain Velasquez in the clinch. His wrestling style is very different. He likes the low-level leg attacks. He likes the singles and the doubles. In the clinch, he will get chewed up, I think, by Werdum. And so that means he has to basically fit a very small space of range as his ideal range, which makes it a harder fight for him than Werdum, who I think has more options given his build and his style. Even if he's going to be hit when Miocic does find that range. And then you have the ground game for Werdum, which is a whole other thing. I think for Miocic to be really successful, he's got to be able to wrestle you. If I'm Miocic's coaches, and I wouldn't deign to tell a fighter what to do unless they paid me to do so, but if I'm Miocic's coaches, I'm saying you've got to take him down, but only under special circumstances. Again, like if Miocic can't wrestle you, he's stuck only boxing with you, and he's very good when he can mix the two. He needs to create those threats. He needs to break Werdum's rhythm and his confidence. He needs to change the tune of the fight. I'm a big believer in the idea that you need to compete with an opponent wherever you can. Not just be able to compete there, but you should show them that you can control the fight wherever. That's how George St. Pierre won his fights. He would outstrike the strikers after he outgrappled them, just to show them there's nowhere in this fight that you can beat me. And Gustafsson did that when he took down Jones and Cormier. Dos Anjos did it when he kicked Anthony Pettis every time Pettis kicked him. I think the most successful, most consistently successful fighters, they press their opponents where their opponents think they're strong, but you have to do it intelligently. You do not want to take Werdum down and be sitting in his guard in the middle of the octagon. I think that's a horrible place to be. Tom Grant on Twitter said he should treat Verdum's guard like it's anybody else's mount, which, Werdum is better on top than he is on the bottom, but you give him room to move his hips in the center of the octagon, and he is still very dangerous off of his back. And so I think Miocic has to hit reactive takedowns or drag Werdum down by the fence. And if he gets him down in the middle of the cage, I think he's got to stand up right away and just kick his legs. But the problem here with all of these is that it basically means Miocic has to do a few very select things very consistently to beat Werdum and avoid getting hurt or caught in something as that happens. And I just don't have faith in Miocic just yet to be able to do that for 5 rounds, even against a 38-year-old Werdum. I still think Werdum is likely still improving. He's still learning and understanding his game. His confidence is an all-time high, and he's a mean bastard too. Like, he is a mean dude to fight. He likes beating you up. He really enjoys it, and he likes teasing you while he does it. So I just think it's a tall order for Miocic, a little too much too soon. He has the openings. It's an interesting matchup, but it's got to be Werdum. I think Miocic tires later in the fight, and Werdum catches him in probably a guillotine or a rear naked choke.
All right, you're not wrong. There's nothing in there to disagree with.
Are you about to pick Miocic, Zane? There's a flavor here.
I am going with Miocic. I did not think I would, but I am. There are a few things. First of all, first and foremost, do not bet on heavyweight fights. I don't know how to make this any clearer to you. I may sound like I am very confident in myself. Connor may sound like he is very confident in himself. Fabrício Werdum for Stipe Miocic is not a fight to be confident in. It is not. It's just not. Like, yeah, Stipe or Werdum maybe deserves to be the favorite here, but this is my feeling on. There are a couple things at work here. First of all, I feel a little bit like Stipe. the matchup with Stipe or for Stipe Miocic with Werdum is very different than the matchup for Cain Velasquez with Fabrício Werdum.
Yeah.
Especially in that, I mean, it's not in Mexico City where Cain Velasquez literally just did not think he needed to train for or fight like he was at altitude. Like, Cain Velasquez did really very well early in that fight. He hit Werdum a lot, was hyper aggressive like he always is, and he beat Werdum up in the clinch. He beat him up when they were striking. He generally did well. Like, he dropped him like so many people drop Werdum in that trap way that Werdum has. But he also fought like there was no idea in his mind that he could maybe get really tired at super high altitude because he's Cain. He bought into the narrative that he has infinite cardio. And before that, Fabrício Werdum fought Mark Hunt, who beat him up for the large part of the first round, also in Mexico City, before getting caught out with a ridiculous flying knee KO that was super cool. And then it's Travis Browne. And Travis Browne is big and tough, but Werdum was basically just able to kind of wait Travis Browne out, frankly.
I get the sense you're about to discredit Verdum's win over the god Mike Russo. I would warn you against that, good sir.
I'm not going back. Obviously, knocking out Mike Russo is tantamount to taking fire from the gods themselves. He climbed Olympus when he knocked out Mike Russo. But the point
I didn't realize Vai Cavallo is actually Portuguese for Prometheus.
Yeah. The point I'm making is that in Werdum's recent fights, his toughness and his cardio have also been like a really major factor in his ability to beat his opponents.
Sure, yeah.
Like an absurdly major factor, because they're always a huge factor at heavyweight. Being tough and being in great shape are things that heavyweights, like that is basically what cuts one heavyweight from the other. But fighting Cain Velasquez and Mark Hunt at elevation, especially when Cain Velasquez just didn't even seem to think that elevation existed. Like, he didn't understand that there are actually different heights in landmass.
He genuinely went into that fight and was stunned the moment he started to get tired. And I know he's used to feeling tired, but he was stunned when he was tired, and Werdum wasn't that tired.
Yeah, because Werdum went out and lived for a couple months.
Yeah.
And Stipe Miocic, he seems like we've seen him in wins where he is very willing to play a controlled game round after round, to just try and work a consistent fight round after round. And I think Werdum is the kind of fighter who can very reasonably lose a consistent fight. Werdum is not good enough round to round that I feel like if Stipe goes in there with a plan and just says, okay, this is how I'm going to fight this fight. I'm going to stay in mid-range. I'm going to box in the pocket. I'm going to, maybe hit the right takedowns when I have the right opportunities. I'm not going to get overly aggressive. I'm not going to do anything dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Then Werdum doesn't have a game built around winning that fight. Like, I think he can just drop rounds. If he doesn't draw Miocic into doing something stupid that gets him submitted, if he doesn't hurt him badly enough to force a takedown out of Miocic, or if he doesn't, make Miocic if Miocic doesn't just take him down and try to ride him out from guard, then I feel like Miocic has the ability to take early rounds and then just stay out in front.
There may be something to the notion that Werdum has probably lost the first round in all three of his last three fights.
Exactly. And then after that, you have, he was in the kind of fights where
the other guy breaks down before he does.
Yeah. And Miocic might do that, but he's so much better prepared than Travis Browne. Better schooled, better technically, has a much more developed game to consistently work offense and not
we can
run
say
out.
He's better than Travis Brown. We can say that.
We can say he's just better than Travis Brown. And then he doesn't have, he's not working in the same environment or with the same kind of style that Mark Hunt or Cain Velasquez were. Hunt's case, like if that wasn't at if that wasn't at altitude, could Hunt have beat Fabrício Werdum just playing this patient striking game? Just because Hunt's not going to tangle with him on the ground. He's not going to do anything dumb like that. He dropped Werdum and just stepped back. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to wait out here now. And, if Miocic can do any fraction of that kind of game, I feel like he can beat Werdum. And so that's why I'm picking him, is that I just feel like Werdum gets to, like, he has this great run, and it's really good, it's really legit, and he has grown as a fighter, he has developed better than ever before, but he's also, I don't know, he's just gotten kind of these fights that are just right for him, that fit right into what he wants.
You kind of feel like he gets too much credit for his opponent's failures, because it's like his opponents come in, they're ill-prepared, or they get tired. Granted, he forces that because
he does.
He will match at a crazy pace for a 260-pound man.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I hope you're right, because Miocic is an Ohio boy, and I would love to have a UFC champ from Ohio. And I definitely, you make a really strong case. The thing is like, Miocic had a fight kind of like that with Junior Dos Santos. And Dos Santos was a guy who, unlike the other guys that Miocic has fought a consistent game plan against, like the guys he's fought a really steady, consistent game plan are like Mark Hunt, who couldn't contend with him on the ground, or Gonzaga and Nelson, who couldn't keep up with him on the feet. He fought a guy like Junior Dos Santos who could stop his wrestling and who could like match his pace in the feet. And it was Miocic who was dead tired by the end of that fight rather than JDS. Like he had a really good first round and it was downhill.
And I do, but I don't think that Werdum, like, he's so much more defensively liable than JDS. Like they're
yeah, you may actually be right, which is like saying something.
He is much more hittable and willing to get hit, and like his best offensive moments in like thinking of that Cain Velasquez fight early, like he I don't know, like he has this weird thing to his game where he's at his most dangerous on the feet when you are swarming him and he gets to fire back on you.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Is he more defensively open just because he is willing to slug? Because like Fabrício Werdum does not back down when you press him early. Like,
but the weird thing to me is that like if that slugging it out doesn't immediately work for Werdum, then I feel like he does kind of back off. Where it's like he'll throw one or two punches, and if that didn't work, he'll just kind of stop and try and get out and try to figure out, he'll just take more shots.
I think he does it pointedly to teach you a lesson, like to show you that you can't just run over him.
Maybe. I mean, he might also just do it because he's not that great a striker, and past a couple strikes, he doesn't have a deeper bag of tricks to just like rip off a 5-punch combination.
But he does. The thing is, he does have his optimal ranges, and as the fight goes on, he knows what his optimal ranges are. Early in most of his fights, if the other guy comes after him, he does not forcibly try to maintain one of those ranges. He like swings away at you in the pocket, and I just wonder if he's maybe easier to hit than JDS, but I think he's also more willing to trade, and I kind of feel like Werdum, in an exchange, is probably more likely to pull out ahead than Miocic, not because he's a much better boxer, but just because he's like tough as nails, and and can do that weird, crazy pace for so many rounds. You're making a really good case. Like I would love to see Miocic win, although I would love to see either guy win because I'm a big fan of both of these fighters.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of both of them. I'm just picking Miocic. I guess I feel like Miocic can actually land enough of the kind of strikes that, frankly, Cain Velasquez is not known for.
Yeah. He's a different style than Kane. Like he's got the different wrestling game. He's got a better boxing game that's like set up off of the jab where he's not falling into the pocket off of every shot. He chooses his spots much better.
Because it's not like Mark Hunt coming forward baited Fabrício Werdum to like swing away and fire back at Mark Hunt. You know, it wasn't like when Cain Velasquez stepped in and fired on Werdum. Werdum kept up this crazy pace. And
Mark Hunt was like one single shotting him. He wasn't like.
And so it's I don't necessarily trust that if Stipe Miocic can come in with like a hard 1-2, that Werdum's just gonna like be right there to fire back at him, because Cain Velasquez is much more of like, oh, I hit you once or twice, now I'm gonna keep going forward and bully you and stay right in front of you, and really try to make that pressure, turn that pressure into a consistent offensive wrestling attack.
There's a difference in the way that Kane and Stipe react to being hit, though. Kane stays steady, and I think Miocic's game changes when he starts to eat some shots.
Yeah, well, it's maybe for better or worse. Like, it may make Miocic fight a smarter fight. I mean, because Cain Velasquez, it's kind of like, yeah, he stays steady. So when you're hitting him, he's just going to, like, stay right in front of you and keep getting hit.
You make a good case.
I'm picking Miocic. I didn't think I would, but after watching tape and watching their recent fights and seeing what they're doing, I just like Werdum. I feel like you have to pick it. Like his picks are all on the intangibles for me, and that is a great way to pick heavyweights. It's like that's not a problem for picking heavyweights largely, but I'm unwilling to do it. I'm going out for Miocic and saying he can fight the consistent, patient, round-winning game that will win him a fight, because he can stop enough of what Werdum wants to do to render him to just stop him from winning rounds, to stop him from doing enough to win rounds.
It is madness now that I hear it, though, because you did just announce that you're picking a heavyweight because he's so consistent. It's heavyweight.
I know. Anyway, the odds of this fight, Werdum is the favorite, -153 to -170. Miocic, the underdog, +143 to +125. I'm fine with that.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. On that note, any final pieces? Anything you want to add or throw out there?
Most of the odds, I think, reflect the fights fairly well on this card. I thought the only ones, there were a couple of underdog ones that could work. If you like what Zane's saying about Miocic, then you can find some odds that are okay, although I think that's a really hard fight to call. But I like Font over Lineker. I think he's got a good edge in that fight. Zane would disagree, so you can take that with a grain of salt, my recommendation.
I may just be going with like a severe man crush pick on that. So
and maybe like these are chance bets, but even though I said before, don't, like if you have a little, like $1 or so to put down, like why not Moicano over Tukuga? Because as an underdog, I think he's a very strong underdog. It's a very difficult match to predict, but it's the kind of fight where you could maybe justify picking either guy as a dog.
Yeah. Otherwise, not necessarily a lot to really throw out on here.
Even the ones that are like unpredictable, the odds are close. You know.
Yep. All right. Well, on that note, you can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush, BUSCH. You can find both of us over at Bloody Elbow. Connor as well at you're still doing like bad left hook stuff and all that, right?
Occasionally. I haven't done it in some time. It's been mostly MMA for me these days.
All right, so you just on Bloody Elbow. That's it, and you can find give us a thumbs up. That's this thing on YouTube. Subscribe to MMANation.com, DOTCOM, our YouTube channel, to get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, interviews, analysis, all that good stuff. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.